Hi guys, welcome to this channel. I believe finance, science and psychology are the keys to better life. One step at a time, let's create a snowballing effect in our lives. Table of content. We covered the happiness formula in the last video and reached the conclusion that love, work and seeking for something bigger than self are three important aspects in our life. So in this video, we'll be focusing on two of them to cover love and attachment, passionate love versus compassionate love, virtue and divinity. Love and attachment. Behaviorism believes that animals will only do what they have been reinforced for doing. According to the behavioral perspective, all human behavior can be described in terms of environmental influences. However, observations found apes and monkeys liked to solve puzzles. If giving monkeys reasons as a reward for each correct step in solving a puzzle, interferes with the solving itself because it distracts the monkeys. Therefore, there are some studies went into do animals have an innate need to hold and to be held. In an experiment, two kinds of surrogate mothers are created for monkeys, each one a cylinder about the size of an adult female monkey, complete with a wooden head that had eyes and a mouth. One kind was made of wire mesh, the other was covered with a layer of foam and then a layer of soft terra cloth. Each of 8 baby monkeys were raised alone in a cage with 2 surrogate mothers, one of each kind. For 4 of the monkeys, milk was delivered only from a tube, coming through the chest of the wire mother. For the other 4, the tube came through the chest of the cloth mother. The suspect is the monkey should attach to the milk givers, but that is not what happened. All the monkeys spent nearly all the time climbing on and pushing themselves into the soft folds of the cloth mother. It is concluded that contact comfort is a basic need that young mammals have for physical contact with their mothers. In the absence of a real mother, young mammals will seek out whatever feels most like a mother. The evolution creates delicate systems to make sure that mothers and children stay together, as it's so enormously important for the survival of the child. Behaviors like sucking, crying when left behind, following whenever possible, functioned in other primates to keep the child close to mom, and all were visible in human children, even the pick-me-up signal of upstretched arms. Attachment theory begins with the idea that two basic goals guide children's behavior: safety and exploration. A child who stays safe survives. A child who explores and plays develops the skills and intelligence needed for adult life. When the safety level is adequate, the child plays and explores, but as soon as it drops too low, and suddenly safety needs become paramount. If your friend brings her son over to your house for the first time, and you succeeded in starting a game, making faces at him to make him laugh, perhaps just watch what will happen when his mom goes to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The thermostat clicks, the game ends, and your play partners scampers off to the kitchen too. The child stops playing and moves towards mom. If mom is unreachable, the child cries, and with increasing desperation. When mom returns, the child seeks touch or some other reassurance before the system can reset and play can resume. When children are separated from their attachment figures for a long time, as in a hospital stay, they quickly descend into passivity and despair. When they are denied a stable and enduring attachment relationship, they are likely to be damaged for life. If you want your children to grow up to be healthy and independent, you should hold them, hug them, cuddle them, and love them. Give them a secure base and they will explore, and then conquer the world on their own. These children had learned that they could count on their mothers and were therefore the most bold and confident. Mothers who were aloof and unresponsive were more likely to have avoidant children who had learned not to expect much help and comfort from mom. Mothers whose responses were erratic and unpredictable were more likely to have resistant children who had learned that their effort to elicit comfort sometimes paid off but sometimes not. Passionate love versus compassionate love. Adult love relationships are built out of two ancient and interlocking systems. an attachment system that bonds child to mother, and a caregiving system that bonds mother to child. The mating system is separate from the other two systems, and it involves distinctive brain areas and hormones. Therefore, while we are one of the few species who form a long-lasting relationship for many years forward after the child is born, it relates to our brain size. In order for the female to give birth and still have a pelvis that would allow them to walk upright, our ancestors involved a novel technique that got around this limitation by sending babies out of the uterus long before their brains were developed. Most other animals, their brain growth slows dramatically soon after birth because the brain is mostly complete and ready for service. However, for human beings, the rate of embryonic brain growth continues for about 2 years after birth, followed by a slower but continuous increase in brain weight for another 20 years. Humans are the only creature on Earth whose young are utterly helpless for years and heavily dependent on adult care for more than a decade. Given the enormous burden of the human child, women can't do it on their own. Big brains so useful for gossip and social manipulations as well as hunting and gathering could therefore have evolved only if men began chipping in. Man and woman in a relationship have many conflicting interests. Evolutionary theory does not view love relationships as harmonious partnerships for child-rearing. But a universal feature of human cultures is that man and woman form relationships intended to last for years, marriage, that constrain their sexual behavior in some way and institutionalize their ties to children and to each other. The modern myth of true love involves these beliefs. True love is passionate love that never fades. But if true love is defined as eternal passion, it is biologically impossible. Passionate love is a wildly emotional state in which tender and sexual feelings, elation and pain, anxiety and relief, altruism and jealous coexist in a confusion of feelings. Compassionate love, in contrast, is defined as the affection we feel for those with whom our lives are deeply intertwined. Compassionate love grows slowly over the years as lovers apply their attachments and caregiving systems to each other, and as they begin to rely upon, care for, and trust each other. Passionate love does not turn into compassionate love. Passionate love and compassionate love are two separate processes, and they have different time courses. Passionate love ignites, it burns, and it can reach its maximum temperature within days. Nobody can think straight when high on passionate love. True love, the love that undergrinds strong marriages, is simply strong compassionate love, with some added passion between two people who are firmly committed to each other. When we admire a couple still in love on the 50th anniversary, it is this blend of loves, mostly compassionate, that we are admiring. If you are in compassionate love and want to celebrate your passion, read poetry. If your ardor has calmed and you want to understand your evolving relationship, read psychology. But if you have just ended a relationship and would like to believe that you are better off without love, read philosophy. People needed obligations and constraints to provide structure and meaning to their lives. How happy someone is or how long he will live, and if you are not allowed to ask about his genes or personality, you should find out about his social relationships. Having strong social relationships strengthens the immune system, extends life, more than does quitting smoking, speeds recovery from surgery, and reduces the risks of depression and anxiety disorders. Virtue and divinity. Our body is like an elephant, and our mind is like the rider. We could not control the elephant by sheer will, but have to train the elephant through daily practices, and a great deal of repetition. Many moral education efforts since the 1970s take the ride off the elephant, and train him to solve the problem on his own. If moral instruction imparts only explicit knowledge, facts that the rider can state, it will have no effect on the elephant, and therefore little effect on behavior. Moral education must also impart tacit knowledge. Is it true that acting against my self-interest for the good of others, even when I don't want to, is still good for me? A longitudinal study that tracked volunteering and well-being over many years in thousands of people was able to show a causal effect. Through volunteer work, all measures of happiness and well-being increased on average afterwards, for as long as the volunteer work was a part of the person's life. The benefits of volunteering work for the elderly are so large that they even show up in improved health and longer life. When people think about morality, the moral concepts cluster into three groups, which he calls the ethic of autonomy, the ethic of community, and the ethic of divinity. When people think and act using the ethic of autonomy, the goal is to protect individuals from harm and grant them the maximum degree of autonomy, which they can use to pursue their own goals. When people use the ethic of community, their goal is to protect the integrity of groups, families, companies, or nations, and they value virtues such as obedience, loyalty, and wise leadership. When people use the ethic of divinity, their goal is to protect from degradation of divinity that exists in each person, and they value living in a pure and holy way, free from moral pollutants such as lust, greed, and hatred. While you feel a sense of holiness when you enter a temple or simply a person's house when he asks you to take off your shoes, purity is not just about the body, it is about the soul. If we think like gods, we become like gods. If we think like demons, we become like demons. Also, disguise helps to extinguish desire, hunger, and motivates purifying behaviors. It expanded during biological and cultural evolution, so that now it guards the body more generally. It helps to avoid unholy environment. When you go to a church or temple, you feel a kind of elevation, merging with something bigger than yourself. It is not just a form of happiness, which brings a variety of positive effects, but is a calmer feeling. Elevation may fill people with feelings of love, trust, and openness, making them more receptive to new relationships. For many people, one of the pleasures of going to church is the experience of collective elevation. It feels like a love of all humankind. Something about the vastness and beauty of nature makes the self feel small and insignificant, and anything that shrinks the self creates an opportunity for spiritual experience. After such rebirth, fear and worry are greatly diminished, and the world seems clean, new, and bright. Only a creature with language ability has the mental apparatus to focus attention on the self, to think about the self's invisible attributes and longer-term goals to create a narrative about the self, and then to react emotionally to the thoughts about the narrative. This ability to create a self gave our ancestors many useful skills, such as long-term planning, conscious decision-making, and self-control, and the ability to see other people's perspectives. Because these skills are all important for enabling human beings to work closely together on large projects, but it is also the main obstacle to spiritual advancement, as the constant streams of trivial concerns and egocentric thoughts that keeps people locked in the material and profane world. Following the spiritual path is invariably hard work, requiring years of meditation, prayer, self-control, and sometimes self-denial. The self does not like to be denied, and it is adept at finding reasons to bend the rules or cheat.